Episode 1, More Than Sets and Reps. In this episode, we're going to go over how the podcast is going to go for the quick tip. For the main topic, we're going to go over what the S.C.A.L method is. For our randomness topic number 1, we're going to go over a little bit of red pill shenanigans. And for our randomness topic number 2, we're going to talk about somebody who thinks they can cheat death or thinks that they solve death. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well out there. I'm Coach Evan. This is Say Cheese in the studio, and you're listening to the very first S.C.A.L method podcast. All right, well, welcome to the S.C.A.L method podcast. Listen, the first section here is going to be the quick tip. It's the quick tip, right? So, for this episode, I want to explain exactly the structure of these podcasts, how each episode is going to go. Okay, so the first section is always going to be the quick tip, all right? So the quick tip for today is the quick tip, right? But basically, that's where I give some actionable items, things that you can do, as it says in the name, quickly, right? So it might be some hacks or something like that, right? Or something, like best ways to get, achieve this goal, or the top 10 ways to achieve that goal. Either way, it's something that you could implement almost immediately, and you can kind of do it quickly. It has a little list of things, so on and so forth, right? So the next section is the main topic. That's going to be the meat of our episodes here, right? And that's where we just go over a variety of different topics, items, different things, but I dig into it a little bit more, and I take a little bit more time to explain exactly where I'm coming from on a lot of these things, right? Then the following section, it can be it's two things grouped into one, basically, right? So it's what I call a bunch of randomness, okay? And it's just random things that I find out, maybe from studies, news, you name it, it's random. Some things that actually happen in my life, whatever it may be. But it's random, and I'll talk about it. And that's also just kind of a way to kind of keep updated on what's going on, especially like if there are some new studies that have been done, right? And I kind of describe them a little bit, but I mean it also could be something like, look, I'm a father and a husband, and living life in general. There's things that always come up, so that'll be kind of like a little bit of story time with Evan as well. But it'll be random things, different random things over the course of the episode, and there's 2 of them, right? So there's random 1, random 2, and that pretty much breaks it down how the episodes are going to go. Now, in general, I will try not to be too political, because I don't necessarily see the how do I want to say it, the reward, the benefit in becoming strictly political, but there are things that happen, there are occurrences that go on that I will talk about, but keep in mind the ultimate goal here is to seek the truth, right? I urge all of you, and I'm doing this myself, I urge you to seek the truth in everything, in all situations, in all industries, in all arenas, right? And we'll go from there, okay? So that's the breakdown. That's the quick tip. All right, let's get on to our main topic of this episode. Next up, we have our main topic, which is, what is the S.C.A.L method, right? Now, before I can even really dig into what the S.C.A.L method actually is, I have to explain to you what Say Cheese and Lift is and kind of how that came to be, right? So let's go way back. Let's go back, I guess, more than a decade, right? and I was this workoutaholic, if you want to call it that. I loved working out. I loved lifting weights. That's really what it was. I just loved lifting weights. But the thing is, I never, like, I was maybe like 120 pounds soaking wet. Um, and, but I was strong still for some reason, but not nearly as strong as I wanted to be. Now, this is a long, long, long time ago, right? So, I always did stuff like at home, little small things here and there, and I was a track runner, so I would opt for doing more cardio than lifting, right? So, and we'll have plenty of room and plenty of space to talk about that later on. But I was a track runner, so I loved running, and I still do love sprinting, not just jogging or running long distance. That was not my jam, but I started to, I guess, take an interest in weightlifting, right? Because there was something about it that just really drew me to it. So I started lifting, and then I put on about 40 pounds of muscle, and there was some fat, obviously, that comes with that. But it was a dramatic transformation, if you want to call it that. But it was something that I was very interested in, weightlifting, and getting my body to perform a certain way and getting it to look a certain way. I actually really took interest in that, right? I treated my body as a canvas, and I wanted to create this work of art, right? And that idea actually lends itself to different events and different situations later on in life as well, that I'm sure I'll go over at some point in time. But either way, I finally made my way. I built up the confidence enough to make my way into a big box gym, and I'm like, it was a lot, because I was so used to finding my little spot in my house and kind of just lifting by myself, right? And let me backtrack just a little bit. So there are two main drivers for me to initially start weightlifting, and seriously weightlifting, right? Number one was the health of my dad. So, my dad is I guess we could just say he's sick, and he's been sick for a while, and I remember after, I think, his first heart attack, he we were on our way out of the hospital, basically, and he was telling me that he didn't want me to end up like him in this state. And that sparked something in my mind where it's just like, okay, I gotta get busy. I gotta be more consistent with these workouts, and I gotta be more consistent with this healthy lifestyle. Um, I gotta I gotta get my stuff together. Um, and that was the initial driving force. So I started doing stuff then, and then it really kicked into high gear even more with the birth of my son, and my oldest son, and he's about 12 now. Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah, so he's he's old, and I remember talking to my wife, and I was saying, um, I I want my son to look at me like I'm the strong dad, right? Like, I want to be the strong dad. I want to be the superhero dad. And I just didn't feel like, and I know mentally, I just wasn't there. I wasn't there mentally. I wasn't there um, physically in my mind, right? So, uh, you know, that really kicked everything into high gear for me, just to train myself, right? So I explained all that to say that that's the beginning. That's my beginning, and that's actually the beginning of Say Cheese and Lift, because I stumbled into the whole idea of personal training to begin with. So I'm I'm lifting, I'm worrying about myself, I'm focused on myself. But I noticed everywhere I go, when I really started to build up the confidence to go to different big box gyms, I'm going to different places. And everywhere I go, people are asking me for tips and advice. And I didn't understand it at first because there were some pretty jacked dudes sitting there asking me how I work shoulders, or somebody would see a different angle of a different exercise, and they would ask questions about it, and I would love it. I would give them details and like why and somehow I figured out about the anatomy before I even went to go get certified or anything like that. It was one of those things I was interested in. So I always studied it, which is strange because I have a career, a 9 to 5 type career, and it has nothing to do with that. So it's just, life is funny sometimes. But a lot of people were coming up to me asking for tips and advice and things like that. So, I'm generously just helping people out wherever I went. And then so there was this one day, one of the owners of one of the gyms that I was, training at, just brought up the idea, just asked me, like, what do you think about being a personal trainer? And I'm like, I don't know anything about it, honestly, right? I didn't know anything about it. So he told me a couple things, and then he said, well, you can make money off of this, da, 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 da. And it didn't really appeal to me, because I was already making money. So it wasn't like I was, just going for a cash grab. But it just, for some reason, it didn't light my fire, so to speak. Until one day, I'm lifting, working out, and everything like that, and I'm finishing up. I'm actually cooling down. I'm cooling down on a treadmill, and one of this owner of this gym, he had clients as well, and he was training his client, and he had her on the treadmill. And so I'm on a treadmill next to her, and we're just talking, and she's just like, you would be a really good trainer. And I'm sitting there like, and, at first I thought it was like, kind of like a setup, right? How coincidental, right? And, I don't believe in coincidence. But she had to do some 2.5 mile, 3 mile, fast paced walk. And she did it pretty much the whole time while talking to me. And she explained how, it made the time go by so much faster, so on and so forth. And I kind of looked at it, and I thought about the situation, and like, maybe there is something to it. Maybe I could help people in that way, and it'll make things easier for them as they're trying to get, towards whatever goal that they're, going for. So, long story, not as long, I guess, right? I ended up, starting, I guess, practicing training. So I started to learn the ropes a little bit of personal training. And maybe a year, some change, a little. I honestly forgot how much time it was. But sometime later, I ended up becoming certified. Studying to get certified and going through the whole process and knocking that out the park, honestly. And so now I'm training clients, getting people to stay active, stay healthy, and so then I decide to expand. So I go into another big box gym, right? And this time I'm still just Coach Evan, right? just Coach Evan. That's all I am. And I open up the business, so to speak, in another big box gym, and it took maybe a few months for almost everyone in there to realize that my sessions with my clients are very, very different. We are we're training hard, and then we're laughing incredibly hard, like belly laughing, tears coming out of your eyes, laughing. And it's almost like people are looking around. I will never forget, there's one person came up, and I don't need to name names or anything like that, but this one person came up and said, "You're having way too much fun here." I was like, "Are you even working?" And this particular client was just like, "I probably lift more than you." It's just, it was funny. It was funny, but we lift hard. We lift hard, and we smile hard. We and it made things so much easier. So it was only a natural progression from that point on to expand to kind of brand it, because it was such a different style of training, at least from what I've seen in my area, right? I'm sure there are plenty of other trainers out there in the world who have a similar idea, who have a similar style, but the fact of the matter is, the way I do it is and was unique. And so I decided to expand on it. And there comes the whole idea of say cheese and lift. And it's a weird name. And don't get me wrong, I like the weird name, obviously, right? Because I don't plan on changing it, and I didn't change it, and I hope I never have to change it, because it's a weird name, but it sticks with you, because it's just like, what is that? What is say cheese and what are we even saying here, right? So we grew with the ideas that line up behind say cheese and lift, and kept expanding, more clients, helping more people, and it was great. It was superb. And then COVID hits, and I was faced with a decision, because you couldn't train in big box gyms. You couldn't leave your house. Right? So the online thing, it was cool. It worked for a little bit, but there's something to be said for that actual person to person interaction in the same area, the same space, right? And there's just the portion of what online can never ever provide, right? Whereas there are a lot of benefits to the online training, and we tried to make it work. It's just there's just something else about being in person and being able to feed off of that person's energy, and they're able to feed off of yours. And so that's all I'll say about that for right now. But I was faced with a decision, because no one wanted to do the online thing. It was too difficult to, and for a point in time, we couldn't even go into the parking lots. And we did that. We did the parking lot thing, and that was all fine and dandy. It was just like, oh, we're working out. We're making the best of this. But I was really faced with a decision whether I should continue this in this way, because at the time we had no idea how long this stuff was going to last, or whether they was going to do another lockdown. They did, or whatever was we didn't think it was all going to collapse. We didn't know whether gyms were going to open up again. Many didn't, but it's so we were working with the best information we had at that point in time. I was working with the best information I had at that time, and I was faced with the decision: keep it going or shut it down, right? And if I were to keep it going, it had to look differently. It had to be different. And that was a tough decision. That was a really, really tough decision to make. And I was trying to take as much time as possible to think about it. But, with each passing day, the decision was almost being made for me. And I randomly went to this car wash around my house, whatever. I was just, look, I gotta get out. Can't go to. I'm not trying to go to the market, do anything like that, and I'll just wash my ride. I was actually going to sit out front and wash it and everything like that, but I'm just like, no, whatever. I need to take a drive, so I'm driving, and I go to this car wash, And I never noticed it before because I've been to this car wash before. I never noticed that there was a whole little shopping center in the back behind the car wash. And I'm like, what is that? And all I see are 4 rent signs all the way up and down the strip. And I'm like, and it's just one of those things that I felt it in my gut. Like it was deep in my belly. And so I skipped over the car wash, drove right past it, and kind of went to the back there, and I just looked at the building. There was a number there, and I decided to call the number. And then we end up, we'll fast forward a little bit through all the other minutia here, and we end up in this building opening Say Cheese and Lift Studio. And it was great. It was great. It still is great. There were definitely hurdles along the way because that second round of lockdowns came through, and they were still. It was weird. It almost felt like, and it's just a feeling, right? But it felt like they were targeting these gyms. They were targeting these fitness facilities, but they didn't really have all their ducks in a row. And then come to find out, hindsight is 2020, right? But a lot of these lockdowns were like, no, they weren't at all beneficial. In fact, they hurt a lot of people. And I'm not going to get into all of that right now. But I opened up Say Cheese and Lift Studio, and I created a safe environment for people to continue to move towards achieving their goals. And they would have my smiling mug next to them now. Now we're even though it was probably masked up at that time, right? And I did also get a couple knocks on the door from the county and all that stuff, and it just was what it was. But we made it, and that's the real big point. We made it through that. So Say Cheese and Lift, in and of itself, became a better brand, but it became a better thing through that trial, through that tribulation, through that pain of trying to figure out how to make this in-person thing work. And I think we did a great job of making it work. I have some awesome clients, awesome people are attached to this studio and attached to the Say Cheese and Lift brand. And if they, and I thank them for sticking with me, because I know that this idea sounded crazy. I know it was crazy, but again, hindsight, it was probably one of the best ideas I've come up with. So what is the S.C.A.L method? What is the Say Cheese and Lift method, right? So it's basically a formalized view of my style of training that I've perfected over the years. And basically says in a nutshell that we're more than our bodies, right? So we're not only are we striving for healthy and strong bodies, but we're striving for a sound mind, and we're striving for a sound heart, right? So but not only are we striving for a sound mind and a sound heart, and we're looking for healthy and strong bodies, but we're also looking and striving for a healthy and strong spirit or soul. And that's the part that I think kind of sets it apart from many other modalities, so to speak, right? So what the S.C.A.L method says is that we are our bodies, but we're not just our bodies, right? We're also our minds. We're our thoughts. We're also our feelings, but we're not just our feelings, and we're not just our thoughts, but we're all of those, and we're also a soul, our soul, our spirit, right? So we combine all of those things because each one affects the other in different ways, right? So what you do in your body it has an effect on what you think and how you feel, and vice versa, and it goes the other way around. How you feel sometimes has an effect on, well, it definitely has an effect on in your body in the physical sense, right? It also has an effect on what you think, and it goes the other way as well. So what the S.C.A.L method aims to do is to get you to improve, and gives you practical tips, practical methods to improving in all four of those arenas, right? I always hone in on the spiritual side. Always hone in on that spirit, because I'm a believer that there's nothing that happens in physicality, nothing that happens in reality that doesn't have some form of spiritual principle or event behind it. And that's just, that's my belief, right? So I understand that this method isn't for everyone, right? But it is a guide. It is a way towards towards holistic health, right? So we're not just looking to, be better in our bodies, because in a lot of instances, you could be pretty strong and pretty healthy, but have a terrible mindset and don't have control or know how to regulate your emotions, and eventually you end up a wreck physically. So it's things like that. So the S.C.A.L method understands each of those arenas. They're important. They hold weight, and they interplay with the other arenas almost perfectly, in some form of like perfect union here, right? But we will dig into each arena specifically in the episodes that are coming up, right? So we'll dig into what it is to actually have a strong and healthy body. What does that mean? What does that look like? How do you achieve it? How do you train to get there? And that's going to be the bulk of the podcast still, right? This is a health and fitness podcast, right? But we also understand that a tool that we can use to achieve that healthy and strong body is having a sound mind. So what is your mindset like? Right? Are you able to rein in your thoughts a little bit here, right? Because we also understand that like what you think eventually turns out to what you do, right? So there's another part of that pathway there. So, and the same thing with your emotions, right? I understand there's people out there who say like, hey, look, I don't really feelings. What we talking about feelings for? Right? What are we talking about feelings for? I don't need to talk about feelings. I just need to lift this heavy thing up and put it down. Point blank, period. And I understand that, and I can respect that. But that only lasts but for so long, right? And it doesn't go on for so long. And it ultimately, the S.C.A.L method aims to it's looking towards the future, right? It's to help you build longevity here, right? Like that resilience. So you're able to take on the things that always happen in life, and you'll be able to take those on, and none of them will really take you out, because you're strong in all of those arenas, right? A lot of and let me just kind of make sure we're clear. Like a lot of the when I talk to the spiritual side of everything, I'm coming from a Christian perspective, okay? That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm, like if you're Muslim, you couldn't listen to this. Or it doesn't necessarily mean if you're an atheist, you couldn't listen to this, right? Like, because believe it or not, I train a variety of people within these studio walls. And the method still remains the same. Okay, so but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that I'm coming from a Christian perspective, though. Okay, so a lot of what I'm talking about and how it all intertwines and interlinks, I'm going to the Bible on. Okay, but that's the S.C.A.L method. Okay, that's how it breaks down, and we'll get into all the nitty-gritty details in these episodes episodes to come. All right. So next up, let's get into a little bit of randomness now. We'll get to the fun part. I was recently on YouTube, and I saw this video of this. I guess this. Well, there was this guy. It was a video of another podcast, and I guess by this time this clip is probably pretty old, but I saw this guy on this YouTube video, and he was essentially debating this Catholic woman. And so what they were talking about was, I think they were talking about monogamy in a general sense. But there's this one part of that clip that really just like piqued my interest, and she basically broke this dude down. Now, who is the guy? I don't know his name. I've seen him around before in a couple other videos and things like that. So he's one of those red pill guys, right? So and if you don't know what the red pill movement, if it's still a movement, whatever it is, like if you don't know what the red pill thing is, it's basically, well, first it gets its name from on the Matrix, where Neo had a choice between picking the red pill or the blue pill, and the blue pill basically kept him veiled, and he didn't understand, like he basically stayed a part of the Matrix, and he didn't really understand the background stuff if he continued with the blue pill. And if he went with the red pill, everything was like revealed and opened up to him, and his eyes were opened, and it was like this whole point of realization. So that the red pill movement is like a hyper masculine movement, I guess. I'm not sure what it is now. That's what it was then. It was part of the what they call the manosphere, right? And they caught some heat over the years, where it's like a whole bunch of different dudes, like I guess people were saying like incels were a part of them and everything like that, and whatever. But it essentially is a male centric movement that purports to promote the success of men and teaching men how to be manly. I guess that's the best way I can explain it, right? Because there's some weird parts to that movement, and let's be honest, like when we're talking about a movement, any movement ends up becoming like kind of a caricature of itself, right? It becomes almost silly, like it's a cartoon of itself now. And it happens with almost every single movement, where they start off with a certain set of ideas, and then they become something else, and it always ends up leaning towards some extreme, right? So this movement, again, is no different, right? So here's this red pill guy sitting there, and the topic was monogamy, and basically what I got from what he was explaining was that like he can't settle down with one woman, and he doesn't see the issue with not doing that, like with not being monogamous, I guess, or whatever. But the main thing was with the Catholic woman that was there. She was asking him questions, and like you could tell, like he was pretty like annoyed by her, right? And the thing about it is, she asked some very logical questions, and she did it in a way that was kind of like elegant. She was like operating in her full force femininity, right? Like, and he was just so triggered by her, and it was just funny, because basically she basically asked him, like, if you could be disciplined in this area, that area, like in your business and fitness and all of these other areas, why wouldn't you be able to be disciplined in that area of relationships and being monogamous, and staying with one woman and being just with one woman, right? And he basically, his whole frame was kind of messed up from the beginning, right? Because then he started to get really emotional about it, and it's just like, while saying he wasn't triggered, and it's just like, come on, man. Right? Like, we could tell you were triggered. We could tell that, this got under your skin. But it was like, the question is, why? Why did it get under your skin so much? Right? So let's leave that there for a second, right? Let's backtrack, right? Because there's this thing I've noticed about these red pill guys, right? It's just like, and it's just, you have these red pill guys and they have these little, I guess, statutes of the movement that's still there, right? And they often will cite, like, it's not in our biology, like it's not in a biologically best interest or something like that, and it's not how evolutionary biology works. And it's just like, okay, I mean, that's cool, whatever. So it's just like, so you want to stay with multiple women? I mean, like, I don't get that. Doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense, right? And it's just an interesting idea that these people line themselves up with. And I just found it, I don't believe in coincidence again, but I think it's very coincidental that a lot of those statutes are definitely like anti-feminist. And then I just noticed, I looked at, like, just the different ideas and different things that have been pumped up by feminists, right? And it's the exact opposite of what these red pill guys are pumping up. So it's just like, it's almost as if the red pill guys are on one extreme and you have like radical feminists on the other extreme, and they both need each other. Because if one didn't have the other, right, like, it's almost ironic, right? Because a lot of the statutes that these red pill guys have that they list out are the very same reason why radical feminism kind of blew up in the first place, right? And so it's just weird. It's just weird, right? Because it's like, you have these dudes saying, talking about like, hey, look, as a man, you got to be this, that, and the third, and women bad, blah, right? And then you have radical feminists over there like, men trash. Look, this is how you should really be. Don't get married. What is? I mean, it's laughable to me because they're both wrong. Right? Like, and they're both on the extremes, and they both need each other. So it's just, I find that very interesting. It's very interesting to me, right? So back to this, right? So the guy was sitting there, and I mean, he was really, like, honestly, he was like pseudo intellectual, right? Because he was explaining how, like, it's almost like he was trying to explain the ways of life, right? Like, this is how life really goes, young Catholic woman, that you don't really understand any of the stuff in the world because you're Catholic. And it's just like, and then at that, like, honestly, his attitude made me kind of realize something. Right? It's like, I kept asking the question, why? Why is it that way then? Why do you think it's that way? Why? Right? And then I noticed, like, there's this little something there where it wasn't like he was, even though he basically made it look like he was very, like, he called her annoying, he called her all these names and everything like that. And she didn't resort to name calling. But by the way, good on her. Like, that's debate 101. Like, that's good, right? Good on her, right? She maintained her frame, looked him dead in his eye, and he basically, like, turned away. Like, I mean, she kind of punked him, but whatever. We'll set that aside real quick. It was interesting that he didn't seem to have such an issue with the the ideas in and of themselves. It more so just came down to, he was the type of person that just didn't want to be told what to do. And that's interesting because it's almost as if he was mad at her and it was upset with her or triggered by her because she brought God into it. And that for me, I thought was very, very, very interesting. And she handled herself well. Like, it was, I don't remember her name exactly, but she definitely handled herself very well. And I mean, there's stuff like this on YouTube all over the place. It's interesting, right? Because where I saw this one particular clip, you can replace the people, and this thing happens quite often, where it's just like, you have these, hyper masculine pseudo-intellectual dudes sitting there talking to a bunch of females that whatever, right? Like they're not modern female, or they're modern females or something like that. Like it's an interesting setup. And it's like all over YouTube, and I don't fully understand why. I guess that's another thing, but whatever, right? So that's my random thing number one. But and I guess I want to close out. So that's a situation, but what are my ideas on monogamy, right? Like I ultimately think to operate in your max masculinity, I think monogamy is a necessity, right? And it's kind of strange to say. And then I'll do something later on. Of course, one of the later episodes, as I said, probably too many times this episode already. But one of the later episodes, I'm gonna do like a man episode, the masculinity episode, the definitive masculinity episode, right? Because it's interesting. Like I would think it would take more discipline, more effort, more masculinity to maintain, stay with one partner, with your, whether it be your spouse or whatever, but with one woman. Like that to me is harder, right? Because the way things are built up nowadays, the structure that we have in the cultural buildup that we have today, I don't want to say too much on it, but it's not very hard to not be monogamous, right? I mean, it's not, because there's more people looking for that. There's less people getting married, more people getting divorced, less people having kids. So what do you think they're doing? Does that mean there's less people having sex? No. No, it doesn't mean that at all. So it ain't that hard to go out there and not be monogamous. So, especially when as a man, things are kind of thrown at you almost every day, whether that be through media, whether that be through, like TV media, social media, whatever, especially social media. Come on now. You can block as many things as you want, but then you end up getting advertisements on silly stuff. Date this hot such and such now. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? But that's what happens. It is thrown in your face all day, every day, wherever you go. So it's not that hard. So, which is a little counterintuitive to what some of the other red pill guys say, where it's just like, well, the majority of these guys aren't they're still virgins or whatever. So there's some weird stats floating around that I never fully believed in the first place, but whatever. Maybe they're right. Okay. But I still think it takes a lot more effort, a lot more masculinity, a lot more of yourself to devote yourself to one woman, period, right? I mean, it just, I don't know. It makes more sense that way. Because think about it, like, it doesn't take anything to leave when things get hard. And shoot, I've been married for 17 years. So, and things have been hard in a lot of that stuff, right? It takes guts. It takes cojones to stay in the commit and be a person of your word. See, that's the thing. I get, like, especially when you're talking about like in a marriage, right? I gave my spouse my word. I gave God my word. So as a man, you stick to that. At least that's the way I see it. Now, maybe there's some nuance to this. Maybe there's some things that I'm completely missing because I've been married for 17 years. I don't know what it's like out there, and I don't want to know. But maybe I'm missing some of the context here a little bit. If you think so, hit me up. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. But that's what I think. That's where I stand right now concerning that. Like, red pill dudes, they got some work to do, right? But we all do, right? We all do. I can appreciate the way this woman handled herself in that section of the debate. It was classy. That was probably the best word I can explain. Classy. While this one dude was getting triggered and getting all emo on her, she maintained her frame, and she ended up being the classy one. It was awesome. It was good to see. All right, so let's get to this topic number 2. So, Tucker Carlson recently did this interview of a gentleman by the name of Brian Johnson, right? And he's this tech guy, right? Millionaire tech dude who spends millions of dollars on his health. Okay, and it's cool, but that's one thing. But the thing that he was, I guess, what he's known for is like he's the anti-aging, beat death guy, right? So it's interesting. It's interesting. It was a very interesting interview, and there were a lot of things that I kind of found fascinating, and then some things I found kind of just like, I'm like, okay, oh boy, this is what this really is, right? So here, let me break it down. Oh, and think what you want about Tucker Carlson. I personally like him. I like Tucker Carlson. Do I agree with everything that he said? No. Do I agree with every interview he's had? No. But at the end of the day, he strikes me as a person who's a journalist, who tries to do journalism, right? And I gotta be real, that's more than what I can say for a lot of people out there, right? Like, journalism is almost dead, but that's a different topic. So, think what you want about Tucker, but he did a really good job in this interview. And I think the thing that made him, kind of stand out to me is the fact that he asked this gentleman, Brian Johnson, questions that I think if anybody else asked him those questions, Brian would have got offended, right? But Tucker asked these questions in such a way that it was almost like, he almost flippantly asked it, right? Because, with that weird laugh he has, and he's just like, and he really asked some questions that I think a normal person would have. Like, it was fascinating. It was good. I think he did a good job, though, all right? So they start the interview, and Brian explains all the money that he's spending on his health and what he's doing and what does that lead to. And he basically has like blood biomarkers of an 18-year-old now. And all that's fun stuff, right? And his main goal, apparently, is to come up with a solution for death. And that's chock full of mess, right? Like, that's chock full of fallacies, that's chock full of, and here's an interesting thing, right? In the interview, Brian was he was cool, right? Like, it was almost like he was the kind of guy that you would actually want to sit down and talk with, right? Like, he didn't come off brash or arrogant or anything like that. But there were some things that really, really stuck out to me. While he had a calm demeanor, some of the stuff that he was saying was just like, what is going on? So let me get right to like the main thing that was just mind blowing to me, right? So he brings up all these stats and stuff like that, and they're talking. Him and Tucker are talking, and he basically came up with the way to slow aging down to a point that we're trying to solve the issue of death. And Tucker basically asked the question of, well, didn't God already do that? And I'm kind of summarizing a little bit here for the sake of this podcast, right? But it was like, basically, didn't God already do that? And that's what people believe. That's what Christians believe. They believe Christ did that. Absolutely, right? Boom. And he kind of just like, he kind of, like paused, sat there and thought about it a little bit. And then he went on this whole thing about like the achievements of man. So that contrast is very interesting and it's very dangerous, right? So he had basically he went over all of these stats and everything like that, and Tucker asked him about God, and what he came back with was more stats on man and what man is going to be able to do. So much so that he got to a point where he was like, okay, you know what? He didn't believe basically that there was a God and that humanity would be able to create God. Oh boy. That's all I can say. Oh boy. So we're going down this road again? Like you really think you're the only dude that had this thought? You're the only person on the face of this planet ever in history to think? It's amazing to me how technology seems to get better, how humanity seems to get smarter, but we keep making the same stupid mistakes. Let me set that aside for a quick moment, right? Because I don't want to go in on this from a standpoint of like bashing Brian Johnson, right? Like I don't want to be disrespectful or anything like that. But what I do see is an incredible amount of hubris. And to completely shut yourself off from that additional possibility coming from Mormonism, right? So he was a Mormon, and then he ends up all the way over here on this other thing. And I mean, there's a lot to be said for that too. I'm not going to say it though, but it was a very interesting thought. And it's kind of just like, okay, if you can't see your own arrogance in this, yeah, that's dangerous territory. That is dangerous territory. But it was interesting because then it was like Tucker kind of complimented him for the amount of wisdom that was coming from him, and that might be somewhat accurate, right? Because there's different kinds of wisdom, right? There's the wisdom that comes from the holy, right? There's the spiritual wisdom. There's the wisdom of man, right? Like, and that's what it is. And there's also, if you believe in God of the Bible, and then you also believe that there's demons and fallen angels and things like that. And there's a separate set of wisdom over on that end as well. So it's interesting what Brian came up with, right? And what he basically, laid out there. Again, I found it to be very dangerous territory, full of fallacies, but it's okay, It just that one kind of just like, whoa, buddy, slow down there, right? The next thing I thought was interesting, and it lends itself to a greater conversation on just these conspiracy theorists, right? So there was this part where he was explaining that he took the plasma of his son and injected it into himself, and then he took his plasma and injected it into his father. And now his dad has all these healthy biomarkers and everything like that, and it was interesting, right? So then he and Brian and Tucker, they start kind of joking a little bit, right? And he was just like, wait a minute. So all that time that people were talking about rich people taking the blood of children, that's true, right? And I'm cracking up. And at this point, I'm cracking up at that, at the way Tucker asked that question. But I'm also sitting there thinking like, oh, wait a minute. He definitely did say that he took the plasma of his son. He took the blood of his son, and he took his own blood, gave it to his dad. That's what rich people are doing? And he didn't deny it. He actually said there's data on it. Wait. Whoa. So we got to slow this down a little bit. You mean to tell me all those cuckoo people that were saying that, oh, they're taking the blood of kids and injecting themselves in it to stay young they're really doing that mess? Yeah, apparently they're really doing that mess. Now, why do I even bring that part up, right? I bring that up because this was another thing that was labeled as a conspiracy theory, and that everybody was just like, oh, don't listen to this person. This person's crazy, right? Now, a few thoughts on conspiracy theorists, right? One thing I've noticed is that we don't listen to people anymore. And a large part of that is because we're so divided, right? We've separated ourselves in the camp so strong, whether it's because of race, gender, of religion, political ideology, or just education, you name it. We've separated ourselves so much from the other that we don't even listen anymore. And the problem is we don't listen, therefore we don't learn. Because no one group is 100% right. Right? No one group has all the answers. We used to understand that. So you have these people out here who are saying all these conspiracy theories and saying all these crazy things, and come to find out, well, they were right. But no one listened to them. Why? Because they lined up different politically than most. So there's a certain idea of what and I don't want to go too deep into this right now, but there's a certain political faction that looks and acts a particular way, and everybody assumes that these people are stupid and they don't understand, and they're in whatever, and they don't do their research, they don't look at data, blah, 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 blah. And so they start mentioning stuff and it sounds crazy. But the thing is, most people, and this is the trouble we have in our times right now, and it's just like, you won't listen to that person even if they're speaking the truth because you don't like them. So it was just like, I was just talking to one of my clients about this not too long ago. And it's just like, listen, there's wisdom and there's some truth found with everyone. It's just like, you can't go into it so biased, right? You can't go into it thinking, I don't like you, therefore I don't think what you say is true. And you just can't go into it like that. But we do, and we do every day. And that's part of the reason why we still have so much division. And it's like, or you take it the other way around. It's just like, I don't like your ideas, therefore I don't like you, right? And it's just like, what happened? And it's just like, so, let me pull back a little bit here, right? You have these conspiracy theorists who said stuff that ended up being true, but they got labeled as conspiracy theorists because people didn't really like them, and they didn't like where they lined up politically. It's the same thing that happened with a lot of stuff surrounding COVID. Oh, we don't like you. Oh, so no. Or that's not the data. No. Oh, you're a scumbag for not getting the vaccine. No. Sorry, truth hurts. That is exactly what happened. And then, now we see, again, hindsight. So, that was another part that I thought was very interesting in that interview, right? So it's just that whole idea of, this is what rich people do? Like, I gotta find something else to do with y'all money. Do something else. Like you got cats trying to put chips in your brain and trying to link people's brains together, and like, what are you doing? It was like, for the betterment of humanity. Okay, I mean, you know, and it might genuinely be that I'm just, you know, kind of poking fun at it a little bit, but yeah. So I just thought that was, you know, interesting. It was a very interesting interview, and you know, there's certain things that that really stuck out. I guess maybe the last thing that stuck out, not as much, but it stuck out to me a little bit was, you know, Tucker was asking questions, and this is where Brian Johnson had no answer. He had no answer at all whatsoever for why we self-harm or self-delete, right? Like, why do we do those things? Why do we do things that are the opposite of what's in our best interest, right? And you can't use evolutionary biology to explain that, right? Because evolutionary biology, the whole point of that and lining up with that is to say that we are doing everything in the best interest of the species surviving. That doesn't apply here if we do things that are the opposite of that. So why do we do that? And Tucker came from the point, and this is also where I come from, basically it's just like, well, there's external forces acting upon us, right? But Brian Johnson, not believing that there is a God, basically says, right? Like, he didn't have an answer. And so I found that to be very interesting, very, very interesting. And again, here's this whole idea of evolutionary biology. And there are some valid points in that. And I don't want to sum it up into just like a soundbite and lose a lot of the nuance when it comes to that. But a lot of those red pill guys sign up for this too. And they just cherry pick certain parts, right? Like it's in man's biology or biological standard for a man to have multiple women, right? And you know, and I already talked about that, but they use this idea of evolutionary biology as a support when it doesn't really support it. So that whole interview was very interesting to me. But that is our randomness for the podcast, for the episode. Okay. All right. Now that was just episode 1 of the S.C.A.L Method podcast. Listen, here's what I need y'all to do though. I need y'all to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube, subscribe to everything, like, comment, do all of that stuff. I need y'all interacting with this stuff. And if you think I'm off base on any of this stuff, which I can be and I'm open to, right? Let me know. I mean, do it respectfully though, right? Don't do it like a troll, right? Like, I don't need all that. And plus, I'm gonna ignore that. So again, you know, let's link up, let's talk, let's continue this conversation, let's build up, let's all learn and grow together. Listen, I'm Coach Evan. This is Say Cheese and Lift Studio, and you just got finished listening to the very first episode of the S.C.A.L Method podcast. I will see y'all on the next one.